there will be the most dire consequences for you and your family.
I've posted several videos about alternative theories of Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. Some of them are admittingly kooky and quite absurd, almost dangerous. But I wanted to share some of the more darker theories out there, floating in the interweb, without caution and outside the blessings of our intellectual minders. Sit back. Here's a random list of 5 dark theories with my unsolicited opinions. This means the alternative theories mentioned within may cause anxiety, rage, and disbelief. But that's why you're here, I hope. Kindly consider leaving a like, share, or subscribe if you enjoy this content. Number 1. Alice was the villain. One of my prior videos discussed who was the villain of Eyes Wide Shut. Every protagonist has a primary antagonist, whether it's man, nature, or himself, especially if he's in a mask and cloak. But this theory considers Alice as Bill's villain, the one who upends and upsets his life goals. Alice clearly antagonized Bill with her semi-lucid rant, fantasizing leaving Bill and her daughter for some faceless guy in a uniform. Her words were more damning than a shove in the street, more like daggers in the heart. It was her openness that pushed Bill, encouraged him as you will, giving him the excuse to go on his adventures. While his actions were amoral, were they debaucherous? Did he just look? Was he overly charitable? Can a man be found guilty for what he thinks he wants but cannot have? According to Alice, yes. Alice breaks Bill's ego a second time and turns him into a blubbering mess in the end. With his mask, she made sure Bill would see it next to her. She wanted answers. Alice gets dubious opinions from fans of the film. She's married to a doctor who's a striking image of Tom Cruise, lives in a spacious apartment decorated with expensive art, and has a beautiful daughter. However, she comes across as bored, needing a little escapism with and without Bill. Most of the film's few scenes of their interactions come with abrasiveness. Alice has to lick her up to get over her few moments dancing with her husband. She gets into a contentious debate with Bill in the bedroom. They have problems reconciling Bill's fantasies. Alice literally gets the last word in. She puts up the price it will take to salvage their marriage and their family. Will Bill pay? Number 2. Alice was part of the secret society. This alternative theory states that this was proof Alice has been part of Victor Ziegler's group all along. It explains why she had Bill's mask snuggled up to her. Alice was there, at the party of flesh and pleasures, when Bill's identity was revealed. If she was not a long-standing member, she was very recently recruited by Sandor the Hungarian. Bill's interloping endangered her as much as Nightingale. Mandy's fate could have been at the direct persuasion of Alice, who didn't want to share Bill nor want him to partake in such trivial ceremonies. Alice had to plead for Victor's forgiveness. Maybe this was why Ziegler pressured Bill to go back to his old ways. A more mainstream explanation for the mask showing up on the pillow was that Bill simply dropped it while in his apartment and was later picked up by Alice. This, of course, was a big mystery to her, and she second-guessed her husband. The mask did not just represent Bill, but the mystery behind it, behind him. I don't buy into this theory for other reasons. One, the party attendees came in 2 classes, the uber wealthy and the hired performers, and Alice was neither. While this theory is fun, it would have taken Eyes Wide Shut to a darker place and deviated Kubrick far from the source material. Not that that would stop him. I would put more weight behind this possibility if there were more scenes of Alice, leaving us ambiguous clues. Yeah, I know others have seen them, but I remain unconvinced. Number 3. It was all a nightmare. This theory posits that some, much, maybe all was just Bill's imagination. What was real, what was imaginary, we don't know. Bill may not even know. Sounds implausible, almost crazy, until we remember that Arthur Schnitzler's story, Traum Novelle, is described as dream story. Where Bill's dream begins and ends is ambiguous. One could argue there was no party, no secret society, no interludes with Domino. It may be an allegory about a world without Bill, that he thinks he's just outside its heavenly gates. It's a pleasurable world until guilt, regret, maybe shame sets in. Those even remotely close to him suffer by disease or violence, physical or emotional. Dreams of fantasies descend into maddening nightmares. The theory gives way to more alternative ideas, such as there was no mask next to Alice. It was an illusion, coercing Bill to confess his sins, even if the dream itself was metaphoric, meaning everything we see was universally a literal experience. There are still answers that are outside our reach of reality. Is Nightingale dead, or is he with his wife back in Seattle? Did Mandy die of an overdose, or was she sacrificed? Why did the mask appear when it did? Who else is keeping an eye on Bill? We'll never know for sure. We're just left to dream up the answers. Number 4. The costume guy and his daughter are party members. The theory goes, the purveyor of Mardi Gras costumes was one of the organization's associates who had no issues taking his daughter to such activities. Perhaps it's a side hustle. I've come across this theory on occasion. It's because the world Kubrick created in Eyes Wide Shut is a society just chewing on its inhibitions and looking for opportunities for excitement. That is most of the story, the quest for gratification, the temptations, the follow-through, the consequences. Eyes Wide Shut was an interconnected universe. People unexpectedly bump into each other. If it's Bill reuniting with Nightingale, or with Mandy, even Bill apologizes for the amazing bad luck showing up at a second party of victors.
I had absolutely no idea you were involved.
Small world. So it's understandable that other characters would also be part of this world. Considering not only was the costume guy not uber wealthy, but his daughter, not quite mature enough. Besides, the costume shop had guests overnight. Sure, we could make modern references, though I have the feeling the studio didn't want to go much more shallow in order to secure an R rating. I was initially going to state that I didn't think this was the intention of Kubrick, and certainly not the source material he adapted from. But we have one more damning theory. Number 5. Helena Was Kidnapped. We come to one of the more conspiratorial, dark, or even scary theories in Eyes Wide Shut. In the final scene, where Bill and Alice reconcile at the toy store, we see Helena walk off. Walk off as in about to get kidnapped by the two old men in front of her, and or the shady character who trails behind. Kubrick, and more so his fans, are notorious nitpicking every minor detail to come up with a theory that meets their wacky conclusions. Of course, I wouldn't know anything about that. At first glance, I didn't see anything that would justify this idea. There's nothing earlier that would indicate Helena was in danger. I just thought that Helena walked off because she wasn't needed in the scene anymore. However, looking deeper, there are a couple very interesting clues. As depicted in the Austrian adaptation, Traum Novelle directed by Wolfgang Gluck, the daughter was named Elizabeth. However, Kubrick named her Helena. Why the diff? Helena may be a play on the Greek character Helen of Troy. Before Paris took her away from Sparta, that sparked the Trojan War. Helen was abducted by Theseus when she was a child to be conditioned as a wife. Who would be responsible for this heinous act? Eyes Wide Shut described two men when things don't go well for its characters. Nick Nightingale is last seen with two big men you don't want to mess with when he checks out of his hotel carrying a bruise on his face. Mandy is described in the newspaper last seen in her final hours with two men before suffering an overdose. If you want to look deeper into the rabbit hole, there are two men entertained at the costume shop. Two sirens try to take Bill away from the party. How does this relate to the toy store? Well, we see Helena's exit following two older, well-dressed gentlemen shopping for toys. Personally, I'm not convinced as the two men pay no attention to her. This takes us to one character who steps into frame just before we cut away from Helena for the last time. That's this guy. This is where things turn weird. Was he at Ziegler's party as one of the staff? He has a striking resemblance to someone seen in several cuts orbiting Alice at the party. What do you think? If true, this would stoke whole new conspiracy theories. What is he doing there? What's with the large bag? Is this just a coincidence? While I don't think this represents a literal kidnapping, it may be a hidden sign that Bill and Alice cannot escape oversight from the society and their minions. This theory is a skewed variation of even more malevolent undertones out there. There is information, or misinformation, that several more scenes followed after the cinematic ending. They feature the fall of the entire Harford family into the seedy clutches of the society. Supposedly, this was Kubrick calling out the secret, not-so-secret culture of the elite and their quest for gratification. It's only fiction, right? But these scenes were cut to protect the careers of Cruise and Kidman, not to mention protecting and preserving the buffet of pleasure the powerful feel entitled to. As salacious as this mythology sounds, the script would have never been approved by the studio, so I doubt something so commercially self-destructive would have been allowed to be filmed, assuming Kubrick wanted to in the first place. Among other detracting evidence, the promoter of this theory also alleges that Kubrick was deliberately eliminated days after his first screening. Soon after, the studio re-edited, cleaned up into what we know as the final cut. But it is easy to take things out of context. What will you believe? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think about the darker theories of Eyes Wide Shut? This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, when you're told not to tell anyone, it's best to not to tell anyone. Check out other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching.